A mother lies awake at night in rural West Virginia in the winter of 1897, unable to sleep, unable to accept that her daughter is really gone. And then, over 4 straight nights, something happens that she will swear to, under oath, in a courtroom for the rest of her life. Her daughter appears to her. Not in a dream, she insists. Not a trick of grief. Her daughter stands at the foot of the bed, cold and pale, and tells her mother exactly how she died and who killed her. What happens next becomes the only case in American legal history where testimony about a ghost helped put a murderer behind bars. This is the story of the Greenbrier Ghost. In October of 1896, in Greenbrier County, West Virginia, a 23-year-old woman named Zona ran an errand into town and met a blacksmith named Erasmus Stribling Troutsheen. He was in his mid-30s, powerfully built, and charming enough that Zona fell for him almost immediately. Within weeks, the two were married over her mother's strong objections. Zona's mother, Mary Jane Heiser, never approved of the marriage. Something about Troutsheen unsettled her from the very beginning, though at the time she had no way of knowing just how right her instincts were. What she didn't know yet was that this wasn't Trout's first marriage. He'd been married twice before. His first marriage had ended in divorce, and his young daughter from that relationship had been raised by his ex-wife's family rather than by him. His second wife, a woman named Lucy, had died less than a year into their marriage, under circumstances nobody could fully agree on. Some neighbors said she'd fallen on the ice while pregnant. Others claimed she'd been struck by a brick that Trout accidentally dropped while doing repairs on their roof. Still others, quietly, wondered aloud whether she had been poisoned. No formal investigations ever conducted into her death at the time. On top of that troubled history, Troutsheen had also served 2 years in state penitentiary years earlier after being convicted of stealing a horse. None of this history followed him cleanly into Greenbrier County, where he arrived presenting himself simply as a hard-working tradesman, starting fresh with no hint of the pattern trailing behind him. Just 3 months into the marriage, on the morning of January 23, 1897, Trout left his blacksmith shop and walked over to a neighbor's house, asking if their young son could run over and check whether Zona needed anything from the store. The boy, Andy Jones, went to the shoe home and found Zona lying dead on the floor at the bottom of the stairs. Word spread quickly. Andy ran back to fetch help, and Trout was soon on the scene along with Dr. George Knapp, the local physician. But by the time Knapp arrived, something strange had already happened. Zona's body had been moved upstairs to the bedroom. She had already been dressed for burial, in a high-collar dress that covered her neck completely. Throughout the examination, Trout stayed close to his wife's body, visibly distraught, crying constantly. But witnesses later testified that whenever Dr. Knapp tried to examine her neck more closely, Trout became agitated and upset, and the doctor, moved by what appeared to be genuine grief, didn't push him back. Knapp performed only a brief, limited examination and ultimately ruled the death the result of an everlasting famine, essentially a vague catch-all for sudden natural causes. Some contemporary reports even suggested complications from childbirth, despite no clear evidence that Zona had been pregnant. At the funeral itself, Trout's behavior continued to raise quiet eyebrows among the mourners. He kept a high collar and a large, heavily folded veil wrapped tightly around his wife's neck throughout the entire viewing, and he stayed physically close to the casket the whole time, positioned in a way that made it difficult for anyone to lean in and get a clear look at her. He also reportedly cradled her head in a stiff, unnatural way while helping arrange her body, as though trying to keep something from moving. For Zona's mother, none of this sat right. Grief alone didn't explain what she was feeling. And then, according to her own sworn testimony, over 4 consecutive nights, Zona's spirit appeared to her at her bedside. Mary Jane described her daughter as cold, pale, and clearly troubled, and said that on the final night, the apparition turned its head completely around, a full backward rotation, to demonstrate exactly how her neck had been broken. According to Mary Jane, the ghost told her that Trout had strangled her in a fit of rage after Zona had failed to prepare meat for a meal. Convinced beyond any doubt that her daughter had been murdered, Mary Jane Heaster went to the local prosecutor, John Alfred Preston, and demanded the case be reopened. By her own account, she pursued him relentlessly for weeks, refusing to let the matter drop, insisting again and again that Zona's death had not been natural. It's worth being clear here, historical accounts differ on exactly how much weight her account of the apparition carried with authorities versus her simple, persistent conviction that something was deeply wrong with the official explanation. Some records suggest Preston was already independently suspicious of the initial rule and was looking for a legitimate reason to reopen the case, and that Mary Jane's account simply gave him the final push he needed. What's undisputed is that Mary Jane's relentless pressure, regardless of how she framed her reasoning, ultimately convinced the prosecutor to order an exhumation and a full autopsy, something that almost never happened for a case that had already been closed as a natural death. When Zona's body was exhumed and properly examined, the findings were undeniable. Her neck had been broken cleanly between the first and second vertebrae. Her windpipe showed clear signs of having been crushed. The ligaments around her throat were torn, and there were distinct, finger-shaped bruises pressed into the skin of her neck, consistent with someone gripping and strangling her by hand. Erasmus Trout Shue was arrested and charged with murder. As the trial unfolded, more of his troubled past came out in front of the jury: his prior marriages, his prison record, and reports from acquaintances that he had once said, half joking or not, that he intended to marry 7 times in his life. Prosecutors built their case largely around this pattern of behavior, combined with the damning physical evidence from the autopsy and the deeply suspicious way Trout had handled his wife's body. Before any real medical examination could take place, Mary Jane Heaster took the stand and testified about what she had seen and heard from her daughter's ghost. The defense fought hard to discredit her, aiding her testimony as the grief-stricken imagination of a mother who had never liked her son-in-law in the first place. But by that point, the trial, with physical evidence alone, was already overwhelming. The jury deliberated for barely an hour before returning a verdict of guilty. Trout Shue was sentenced to life imprisonment, where he died several years later, having never confessed to the murder. Whether the ghost story truly influenced the jury's decision, or whether it simply became the memorable, retold version of a case that solid forensic evidence would have won, regardless, is something historians still debate. What's certain is that Mary Jane Heaster's insistence, whatever drove it, was the reason the case was ever reopened at all. Without her refusal to accept the official explanation, Zona's murder likely would have gone down in the record as a quiet, unremarkable death by natural causes, and Trout Shue would have walked free to marry again. Today, a historical marker stands in Zona's grave in Greenbrier County, officially noting the case as the only known instance in American legal history where testimony related to a ghost account helped secure a murder conviction. Whether you believe Mary Jane Heaster truly saw her daughter's spirit, or simply believe a mother's grief and instinct led her to a truth the rest of the world had too quickly dismissed, the outcome was the same justice, finally for Zona Heaster Shue. If this story gave one chills the way it's given generations of West Virginians chills for over a century, Hit that like button and tell me what you believe really happened in the comments. Share this with someone who loves a true strange story. And subscribe for more real mysteries just like this one.